So we are on the hotel now. This is, I would rather not to say is
What's the matter with
cheap hotel because it cost me £89, and that's what we got in here. What is this?
Side.
Oh, it's a side. It's hanger in here. And they have a tea. They have a TV. One. And the bed.
It is going to turn warmer as well over the next few days. A maximum tomorrow though of 19 Celsius.
One.
And then it really does start to increase on the temperature side of things.
We go to the toilet.
It's cloudy tomorrow.
Oh my god. This one. It's the toilet. Shower. That's it. It's about £89. So we are here on the second floor. So that is the view outside.
Oh, it knows when to slow down. Well, you don't see the bottom of all the...
Oh, sorry my dear. Sorry. So we are here inside the cable car. This is the view from the top. What amazing. And I think the house is just like a farmhouse. And then it's about 21 quid per person for the entrance here. You can see the view from the top. We are inside in the cable. Ayan, si Anab yung video kasi takot ako I got fear of height. Takot ako kasi nag-move yung kaya yun, mga empty siya, pabalik na yun.
Just stay your hands, that's it.
So wala pang masyadong sakay kasi ang mga tao, it takes over an hour to tour in this area para papasok sa cave. Tapos yan, super ganda, makikita mo sa baba yung mga bahay. Tapos oh my god, it's very nice.
There's, I think he said 4 sets of 3.
Huh?
4 sets of 3.
4 sets of 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're halfway now. That's a long way down if we fill.
I don't want to look at downstairs because
That would do.
no, doesn't matter, Tabs. You can capture that one. Don't move
Well,
it.
I can't do much.
And then we come back here when we go back down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Now, have you visited before?
No, not yet.
Well, welcome. We'll just wait for some of the travellers on the slower rear donkeys just to reach the top of the hillside.
Yeah. I think you're gonna stay in here. I'm the one who
Yes,
going with
darling.
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning.
You're gonna stay in here, Tabs, yeah? And then
I'll go.
Good morning. Well, ladies and gents, welcome to this, the Heights of Abraham.
no, because you cannot do it, Glenn. It's too much for you.
And indeed, I'm the proud owner of this establishment in this glorious year of 18. So welcome one and all to this, the Heights of Abraham. Now, if you follow me, I'll now give you some information in order to enhance your pleasure whilst here on this wonderful estate. Now, ladies and gents, for those that haven't been before, if you head down this very steep path, I'll say those 2 words again, steep and very. In about 10 minutes time, you come to the Nestus Mine and Rutland Cabin. Tours today are every hour, on the hour, so 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and up to 3 o'clock. That particular cavern celebrates the history of lead mining on the hillside over the last 1,000 years. Now, if you head up the hillside to the end of this building over there, you come to the Great Mason Cavern. Now, that's more geological in nature, created some 350 million years ago. Now, tours there do vary, and there's a clock on the outside which will tell you when the tours are. Now, both caverns are distinctly different, so if you've got the time, they're both worth visiting. Just be mindful, it's a very steep hill down there. Now, we have two exhibitions are available. One at the far end, which is the history of the hillside, with a moving picture show, because we're the future. And the other one is over here at the Mason Pavilion, a new exhibition celebrating the visitors to the Heights of Abraham through fashion. Lovely to see. Behind you is Prospect Tower, built in 1844, giving you commanding views from the top. And behind me is the restaurant, shop and cafe. Now, if you're wanting to booking for the restaurant meal, it's where those green canopies are. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. What I don't know, I just make up. But the ladies and gents with the badges on are more than happy to help and assist. Have a lovely day and explore at your leisure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah, we want to do the queue first.
Yeah.
I think this is very surprised.
Are you sure, Glenn? No, you cannot do this, Glenn. Just book the restaurant, Glenn, and sit down, or you just sit down
No,
over
we're
there.
not booking a restaurant.
No, just sit down over there. So, dadon ta mo dito, guys. Sa ano? Ito yung view. Super ganda.
Well, it must hush, small. Yeah, a bit like you know, a bucket and small shirts. Oui, oui, like the cooking and stuff. That's not good.
Going this.
Well, now stop there. Stop there. Turn round and come down.
No.
To see what it's like.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Turn round and see what it's like to come down.
No, yes, I know.
Come down before you go too far.
Tangas taan ng ilahang kuan tower. Super taas. Actually, na ako'y fear of heights, pero okay lang. Nandito ako ngayon sa yung tower nila. Napaka-steep yung hagdanan, pababa at paakyat, but I still can manage. And then super ganda ng view. I left him on downstairs because he could not be able to walk on the stairs. He got any problem, so yeah. If you can see that thing, the one just pointed my finger, is a castle. That one, but I don't know what castle is it because I don't have, wala akong map. Nandun kay tanda yung map. So super ganda, worth it. At least is worth it yung ano, makikita nyo yan dyan, doon. Dami kong kamera kasi yung ano, pero ang hirap talaga mag vlog, lalo na't mag-isa ka lang. So yan, super greenery talaga. Tapos dito, uy, natatakot ako dito, super ganda dito, as in. Saka doon din. So at least nadala ko kayo dito kahit papano, napakita ko sa inyo yung greenery in England. Traditional clothes.
And it's very much what's being worn by Queen Victoria at the moment, because she's just bought Balmoral Estate. So I'm afraid if you want to be in fashion, you need to be wearing tartan.
She's been dead for a few years.
You need to be wearing tartan, I'm afraid.
Oh.
That's what everybody who's anybody's wearing at the moment.
No, but isn't she in black?
Oh no, not at this stage, no. Prince Albert is very, very much alive. Very much alive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Are you partaking of the cave tour?
Yeah.
I think that the school party is just to arrive, just about to arrive. So if you can make this one.
So we're going to the cave now. Then there's a lot of people around here, and we have a tour guide.
We're all just about here. Now this is the first of 3 cavern sections we're going to be walking through. This hillside is full of caverns. There are hundreds of them. Some of them quite a lot bigger than this section, a fair few a bit smaller. There's mile after mile of tunnels and passageways linking the network of caverns together. Towards the end of the lead mining, this hillside was one huge lead mine, known as the Carding Nestus mine. But in the early days, before the network joined up, there were all sort of separate little lead mining operations. This particular area was known as Walker's Grove, and it was named after the landowner here at the time. His name was John Walker, and this was the last half of the 17th century. And the grove part of Walker's Grove is an old Anglo-Saxon word for a mine. So it's a lead mine, and this is what they're looking for. What I've got here is a small piece of rock, and it has some mineralisation in it. So you see the lovely silver shiny grey stuff here, this sparkly stuff. This is a mineral, it's a crystalline mineral, and it's called lead sulphide. So this is what the miners were after, lead sulphide, commonly known as lead ore. And this was on and in the rock, and there were seams and veins of this going through the rock in all different directions. So that's what they're after. The reason they're after this is because when it's been processed, it becomes a very soft, very malleable metal, very easy to work, and really rather useful. It was particularly good as a bit of a building material. So for example, the processed lead, it will be so soft, you could hammer it out or roll it out into big flat sheets. And big flat sheets of lead are really good for roofing. We still use it for roofing today. You could form valleys and gutters with it to drain the rainwater off the roofs of buildings. You could make pipes out of lead, which brings us to the initials for lead on their periodic table. Anybody? Anybody? PB, yeah, PB. And that is an abbreviation. That's an abbreviation of a Latin word for lead, plumbum. So it's a funny old word, but plumbum. But of course they used to make pipes out of lead, so we get words like plumber and plumbing comes from that old Latin word for lead, plumbum. So every day's a school day, isn't it? The Romans mined lead here too, a couple of thousand years ago, and the Roman name for lead is galena. And galena means the bright one, the shining one, the sparkling one. Yeah. I can't think why they call it that. You do find galena as a girl's name as well in parts of southern and eastern Europe. If you switch the G to an H, you get Helena or Helen, origin of the name Helen. Do we have any Helens on tour? No. Do we know any Helens? Yeah, well next time you see her, tell her she's named after a lump of lead. So that's what they're after. Lead sulphide, lead ore, galena or plumbum, and it becomes a soft metal, really useful. Now when John Walker was mining here, It was actually quite a good time to be involved with lead mining. It was extremely hard work. It was hard physical effort. It could be hazardous, and on occasion it could be dangerous. But generally you made a living. However, there were times where you made a lot more than a living from lead mining. You could make an absolute fortune down here. And the last half of the 17th century was one such time. And that's because of something that happened in 1666. What happened in 1666, anybody? Great Fire of London, yeah, London burned down. And this had a huge impact on lead mining. The old city of London was made out of timber and thatch. The buildings were very close together, it was all highly combustible. When the fire took hold, the city burned a bit too readily. The new London was going to be built very differently. It was going to be cut block stone, brick, tile, slate. The demand for lead was huge, absolutely enormous, for roofs, pipes, guttering, windows, you name it. The demand couldn't be met. And when the demand can't be met, the price goes up, and the price went up quite a lot. It wasn't just a bit. Even by the end of the week it had gone up 4-fold. By the end of the year it had gone up 20-fold. So lead mining was like a licence to print money, and everybody had a share of that. The workers were paid a day rate. They were also paid a percentage of the yield. Ordinarily that was an incentive, but after the Great Fire it just meant they absolutely coined it for a good few years. So it was quite a good time to be a lead miner. Having said that, I won't make light of the fact it was hard work, and it could be hazardous, it could be dangerous. And lead is toxic. Lead sulphide is poisonous. And long-term exposure wouldn't do your health or your life expectancy much good. But at times you can make a lot of money. So we're going to be moving on now. We're going to walk through this tunnel. This tunnel was a pipe vein. And a pipe vein was a seam of mineral going through the rock. This seam of mineral was pretty extensive. In places, it was 10 to 15 foot tall, and it was 30, 40 foot wide, and it was going through this hillside for hundreds and hundreds of feet. And that would keep a team of lead miners busy for quite a long time. And it did. It was being worked by the Cardings, and it took them about 60 years to work their way through it. So you could work down here your whole life, and generations did for a good few hundred years until the lead finally ran out. So we're moving through the pipe vein. This is where you're going to have to do some ducking down, and this is where we encounter the first of the steps, 42 concrete steps. They're a bit uneven in depth and height, and they are a bit mucky, so just be extra careful on the steps. If anybody wants to bail, you can go back out the way you came in before the hard work starts. Okay, any questions before we move? Okay, right, follow me then. I shall lead the way. You can wander about for a bit. You can go down as far as that barrier, okay? So the lights change colour, wander about, take photos. Please don't go beyond the barrier though. It used to be riddled with COVID down there. Okay, so don't go beyond the barrier. Any questions? I'm just here, so come and find me. And then we'll move on shortly. As soon as we hear the school group, because we're here before we see the school group coming after us. It's a void, look, in the darkness. That's the back of the mason. That's where we've just come from. So that is what was behind that white chain link fence. If you have a look at the ceiling here, you can see tool marks. And this is where there was mineralisation up here in these roof sections. Quite a bit of it. There would have been thousands of tons of lead up here in the roof. And you see where hand tools, hammers, picks, chisels have been used to get mineral. They've chopped it out of the roof, look. There's some marks up there. Just here, some of the lead miners have left their mark too. We know who everybody is. So at the top at the middle, we've got an EW, and this is Ezra Whitworth. Bottom left-hand corner, TW, Thomas Whitworth. Ezra and Thomas Whitworth, they weren't actually lead miners. They were what were known as bar masters. And the bar masters were based at Wirksworth at the Barmoat Court. And they had a number of roles. They would adjudicate in disputes, of which there were many. Sometimes the disputes could be quite unpleasant, even pretty violent. They were also a bit like customs and excise, weights and measures. They would look at productivity, they would measure the yield, they would work out what was due to the crown, that sort of thing. Inside the box we've got some of the lead miners. Top left there is an IF, that's Isaiah Fern. Underneath that is Isaiah's brother, Mordecai. Isaiah and Mordecai came from the village of Bonsall, a couple of miles up the hill that way. There's a date, 1705, and they were part of Tinker's group that started to dig out this section from 1699. When they carved that in the rock in 1705, they weren't standing up a ladder. They were standing on the ground when they got down about this far. Mordecai, he worked down here until he was 78. Then he went on to run a mining supply shop in Matlock, and he lived to be 102. His brother Isaiah, he lived to be 98. That was pretty long-lived by any century standards, let alone the 18th century, particularly having worked down mines, which wasn't good for you. But some of these old boys lived to a grand old age. And then you've got a complete contrast here on the top right with young Thomas Wood. Thomas was killed down here in a mining accident. Thomas was only 15 years old. And then you've got Bernard there on the bottom right, Bernard Young. Bernard, he was disabled, he only had one leg, so he didn't do any lead mining. Bernard spent his shift directly below the mine shaft in the Masson cavern. I forgot to point it out to you in the ceiling. But Bernard's job was to load materials into the buckets, hang them onto the ropes, have them winched up the mine shaft throughout the day. And his job title, he was a hanger-onerer. That is what he did, and he was down in the book as a hanger-onerer. A few years ago, one of the guides here found some information that suggested that Bernard might have been an old soldier. That might explain how he lost his leg. If he was one of those people that had perhaps gone off somewhere exotic on a campaign and fought in a war and lost his leg. But it was just something that suggested he might have done. In those days it was unusual to travel. Most people tended to live and die within sight of their parish church. Going to Derby would have been a big thing. Going to that there, London, would have been unheard of, let alone going abroad. But some people did go abroad and fight wars and so on. And I guess it must have been pretty exotic when they came back and the stories they'd tell. So that's Bernard. That's just some of them. There would have been dozens working this part of the hillside, but collectively there were hundreds and hundreds of them. The Nestus mine, which is further down the hill, the entrance to the Nestus mine is called the Tavern. The reason it's called the Tavern is because it was a tavern. The entrance to the lead mine was a pub, and that pub made a living selling beer to miners. That's how many miners there were that even had their own pub. How cool is that? Just up here we have fossils. So up in the ceiling, these shapes here that look like seashells, that's exactly what they are. Fossilised shell debris up there. I believe we've got brachiopods up there, loads of other sort of molluscs, bivalves. That's coral, that is. I'm told this is the frond of a fern coral, fossilised coral, and you've got more shell shapes. The reason we've got fossilised coral and fossilised shell debris within the rock is quite simple. It's what the rock is actually made from. This is limestone. Specifically, this is carboniferous limestone. Limestone is what's known as a sedimentary rock. It's made from compressed and compacted silts and sediments. And the silts and sediments that became this rock were deposited during the Carboniferous period. This was some 330, 370 million years ago, at which point this landmass was down on the equator, roughly, at the bottom of the warm tropical ocean. That's where the corals and the shells come in. When those plants and animals died, they sank to the bottom of the sea, layer upon layer of debris built up on the seabed. The weight, the pressure of the ocean above gradually compressed and compacted all that material into this. Limestone is quite literally squashed marine life. That's why there are marine fossils in it. No dinosaur fossils. And the reason for that is simple too. The rock's older than the dinosaurs. It's about 350 million years old. The dinosaurs were here about 65 million to 200 million years ago. So this was pushing 100 million years old before they even showed up. So no dinosaur fossils in the rock. It's quite old rock, this is. And that just about wraps it up, unless we have any questions. Anybody?
Well, they have had a special person to do that, because your average miner wouldn't have been able to read and write, would they? So
It's a very good point, yeah. The vast majority of the population was illiterate in those days. I guess if you're some form of management, you would have had education to agree to a degree to be able to do things like that. But yes, it's a good point, that is. In those days, lots of people simply left their mark, particularly if they signed a document or anything like that. So yeah, Sunday schools, I'm not quite sure when Sunday schools started to become a bit of a thing, but they would have worked typically an 8 to 9 hour day, Monday through to possibly Saturday, but Sunday would have been the Lord's Day. Everybody went to church on a Sunday, so they would have had a day off a week, and that is generally the only opportunity to maybe get some education when the Sunday schools started up. But yeah, in those days a lot of people wouldn't have been able to...
They all want the same meeting.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine one person did that. I have a bit of a theory as to why Ezra Whitworth and Thomas Whitworth aren't in the box. I reckon the lead miners did that, and then I reckon these two came along later and said, how come we're not there? And I think they've been tacked on the outside as a bit of an afterthought. That's just my little pet theory as to that. There's a lot of this sort of stuff throughout the cabin network here. There's a bit more of it down in the Masson, but it's difficult to show it to you. The other cabin, the Rutland, the graffiti there is lead miners marks on the rock, but quite a lot of the graffiti in the Rutland is from you lot, from tourists. And I don't mean 20th century, but 18th, 19th century tourists, they've sort of left their mark. So you'll sort of make out Edmund 1824 or something, and Edmund left his mark there on a day trip. So, yeah. So, any more questions? Right. Well, we've got 80 steps to get out, so enjoy. Okay.
So this is the stairways going out from inside the cave, and I think 200 steps. Can you imagine, was 16th century they make it like this inside the cave for living. Tapos ito yung background sa labas. May telescope dyan, makikita nyo yung kabilang area na may castle doon. Sobra nakaka-impress yung mga tao nung mga sinaunang panahon. Nagawa nilang gawin itong cave for living. At ayan, papalabas na ko.
Now we are exit the cave, then we heading back to the main entrance now. You can see, kikita ninyo guys, grabe yung mga puno. Saka this area was 16th century, 1999. Kita nyo yung kahoy, grabe yung kahoy, pero mura na jugod ka ng kuya puns kakapoy ba nag-aari. I think it's a long way to go down.
Ito yung exit way going back to the car park. Kung makikita nyo yung mga tanawin doon sa dulo is may ano doon, castle. Hindi ko lang siya na zoom in. Sobrang ganda talaga. How amazing. Ang God's creation, you know. Sobra talaga, nature. Ang ganda talaga.